Howdy, howdy, and welcome to Gale MtG. I am Corbin, your host, and today we'll be looking at Izzet Gathering for Pauper. I am a massive fan of Pauper. If you know me very well, then you will know that Pauper is one of my all-time favorite formats in just about any game. I love it in the Final Fantasy trading card game, and I especially love it in Magic the Gathering. So, if you're just new to the channel, welcome. I am also just new to the channel because I literally made it today. But if you're new to any of my channels and the way that I lay out decks, I have a strategy section, which is just basic overall. I have a synergy section, which is kind of like talks about the cards that best kind of work together. I've got card advantage, so that's drawing, digging, rummaging, looting, whatever. Removal, protection, recursion, weaknesses, and finally the sideboard, which is a new little addition specifically for Magic the Gathering. Because, as you know, if you're playing Magic of any type anyway, games are best of 3, and usually and in between games you can sideboard cards. So that's kind of an exclusive thing for Magic the Gathering for the most part. But that being said, let's just dive straight into it. First off, we have our strategy. This is Izzet Gathering, and we're basically just a mid-range deck that wants to mill spells and get benefits for copies in the graveyard. This is mostly Rite of Flame and Goblin Gathering. Goblin Gathering creates a bunch of little 1/1s. I believe it's 2 plus 1 for each copy of Goblin Gathering. If we can cast multiple of those, our army gets pretty big pretty quick. And if all else fails, we have Delver of Secrets to just swing in at our opponent and win us the game. Our synergy, Goblin Gathering, Scrapwork Mutt, and Rite of Flame benefit from being in the graveyard, and pretty much everything else in the deck just puts it in there. Not much more to say about that. Over time, the more that we have of those particular cards in the graveyard, the better they'll get. So we need to survive long enough to make sure that happens. In our card advantage, we've got Pieces of the Puzzle and Strategic Planning. They let us dig for and mill spells for later use. Pieces of the Puzzle lets us check the top 5, add 2 instants or sorceries into our hand and mill the rest, which can be really strong. You can choose not to take a Goblin Gathering, or maybe like you hit 2 in your top, or a Rite of Flame and a Goblin Gathering. You can choose not to take those and bin them, and then maybe keep a Strategic Planning or another Pieces of the Puzzle, or maybe a bolt or a spell or a counter spell if you think they're really going to be if they're going to be mean about it, basically. Faithless Looting and Consider are really good for filtering, and they can also make your Delvers go live if needs be. In our removal slots, we have Bolt and Chain Lightning. Pretty simple stuff, really. Deals with creatures or chips away life totals. Either way, they are just super versatile, and you pretty much want to run them in just about any red deck, I think. I've yet to see a red deck that doesn't run Lightning Bolt. Foil and counter spells are keeping our opponents in check before we reach our win cons. We really want to make sure that we are basically stopping our opponents from doing anything that they want to do. If we can counter an Exhume, then counter an Exhume. It's fine. Our creatures are cheap. We have loads of ways of getting them back, and with only 10 creatures in the deck, most of the time Goblin Gathering is doing the heavy lifting for what we need it to do. Most of the cards in this deck are islands, including the Molten Tributary and the Volatile Fjord. On top of the 8 other islands, there are only 2 basic mountains in the deck. They really don't matter all that much. We want to be able to discard islands for foil, and if we have to do dual lands for that, so be it. In our protection slot, counter spells. That's about all you need to know about protection in this list. There's not really anything like crazy or clever that you can do in response necessarily. We want to stop anything that our opponent does before it happens. Recursion-wise, Scrapwork Mutt has Unearth. Maybe it enters the field, our opponent kills it. We can just bring it back one more time. Or maybe we mill it into there with pieces of the puzzle or strategic planning. Again, we can just play it out and it has haste. Can you hear my dog in the background? Our main weaknesses, though, unfortunately, are aggro and graveyard hate. They just shut down the deck. If our opponent can outrush us, nothing we can do about that. We have counter spells, we have bolts, so maybe we can deal with it, but it's really hard, especially with the more kind of current mono red decks that are running around. We have to deal with Monastery Swiftspear, sorry, and we have to also deal with the Dwarven Forgemaster things, which are just a real pain to deal with. I love mono red, don't mishear me. It's a great deck and personally one of my all-time favorites, but it's still really strong. And basically, as soon as they get to sideboarding Relic of Progenitus or anything in the graveyard, in the second round and third round, then basically we're kind of, our goose is cooked a little bit. Best way to stop that is obviously by maybe adding those cards into our hand. So if you have pieces of the puzzle, you can just add pieces of you can add your Goblin Gathering and your Rite of Flame into hand and let the rest go and have all the spells that you don't necessarily need, and you can keep those in your bid. And lastly, the sideboard. So this is a little bit different from how I do my Final Fantasy videos. I have, in my sideboard, we have Smash to Smithereens at 2, beats artifacts. I'm just going to basically go through and say what matchup it beats. We have Hydroblast and Spell Pierce, basically a bunch of extra counter spells against our opponents. However, Hydroblast is really good against mono red. It can only hit red things, but mono red is usually the deck that will wipe this thing out. Pyroblast, super strong against blue decks. And again, this is more for the control matchup, the ones that are going to be countering our stuff. We don't want to get counterspelled. We don't want our opponents to counterspell us. So we're going to just run that many more counterspells. And End the Festivities is really good against aggro and token decks. Especially ones that just play a lot of cheap 1/1s for pretty quick. A list or a card I have seen around is Omen of the Suns, which is really cool. You just flash it in. You have 2 1/1s already. Super strong. And we can burn our opponent for a point of damage as well if we use End the Festivities to stop that. But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will put the deck list in the description down below. Hope you have a great day and a great rest of your week.